This is not a video about romance, and it is certainly not just for women in their 40s considering remarriage. This is a lecture about something far more fundamental: how human beings repeat their suffering and how they unknowingly engineer the same emotional collapse under the illusion of a different beginning. If you have ever loved, lost, and dared to try again, this is for you. If you are standing at the threshold of companionship, wondering whether this time will finally be different, this is for you. And if you believe that love alone is enough to guarantee safety, stability, or dignity, then this may be the most important message you will hear. Let us begin with a difficult truth. Remarriage in midlife is not an emotional decision. It is a structural one. When you married in your 20s, you were investing in a future that had not yet unfolded. But in your 40s, you are no longer investing in possibility. You are managing risk. You are protecting what remains: your time, your health, your financial foundation, and most critically, your psychological integrity. This is not pessimism. This is clarity. Because at this stage of life, the cost of error is no longer abstract. It is irreversible. This lecture is not about blaming past partners, nor is it about discouraging love or companionship. The objective is singular and uncompromising: to interrupt repetition, to prevent the same relational patterns, the same emotional dynamics, the same structural vulnerabilities, from disguising themselves as bad luck and re-entering your life under a new name. Because most people do not fail in relationships due to incompatibility. They fail due to misdiagnosis. They misunderstand what they are entering. By your 40s, you have already passed through at least one relational collapse, whether through divorce, loss, or prolonged emotional disengagement. This experience is not just a memory. It is a neurological imprint. Your brain has adapted. It has strengthened what psychologists call the threat detection system. You are now more sensitive to risk, more alert to inconsistency, more aware of subtle emotional shifts. And yet, here lies the paradox. The very wounds that sharpen your awareness can also distort your perception. Pain does not only protect, it also projects. There are 4 critical psychological traps you must recognize. First, the moment loneliness replaces judgment. Loneliness is not just an emotion. It is a cognitive distortion. It compresses time. It accelerates attachment. It reduces scrutiny. What should take months to understand is compressed into weeks, and the mind whispers a dangerous sentence: this time will be different. But in most cases, this is not intuition. It is optimism bias. Second, the tendency to cover structural realities with emotional language. Love is a feeling, but marriage is a system. It is a contract financially, socially, psychologically. When emotion overrides structural evaluation, you are not choosing love. You are acquiring risk. Third, the psychology of overcompensation. After a painful past, many people unconsciously construct a narrative. Next time, I will choose better. Next time, I deserve more. But this mindset often distorts perception. You are no longer evaluating reality. You are negotiating with your past. Comparison creates expectation. Expectation amplifies disappointment. Fourth, the minimization of economic structure. For a woman in her 40s, especially without children, assets are not merely financial resources. They are survival infrastructure. Remarriage is not just about emotional companionship. It is also about the flow of resources, liability distribution, and long-term stability. To ignore this dimension is not romantic. It is negligent. So what must be done? Caution alone is insufficient. You must become actively analytical. Do not listen to what a person says. Study what they have lived. Their history is not background information. It is predictive data. Do not evaluate income potential. Examine loss responsibility. How do they behave under stress? What emerges when they are angry? Observe them when they drink. Listen carefully to how they speak about former partners, because a person does not reveal their nature in peace. They reveal it in conflict. Ancient philosophical traditions have long warned us about this. One such text, often misunderstood as a guide to the afterlife, is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It describes a state between death and rebirth, a liminal space where the mind encounters projections of its own fears and attachments. But this is not merely about death. It is about decision right now in your life. The text suggests that attachment distorts perception, that what we fear, we project. What we cling to, we misinterpret. And most dangerously, we mistake illusion for reality. This is precisely what happens in relationships. We confuse attachment with love, but control is not love. Dependency is not love. Compensation is not love. These are psychological strategies, not emotional truths. Remarriage in midlife should not be an attempt to erase the past. It should be an evolution of consciousness, a refinement of perception, a restructuring of how you see, choose, and relate. Because relationships are not salvation. They are systems. And when systems are built on unstable foundations, they do not collapse immediately. They repeat. If there is one thing you take from this lecture, let it be this. Do not look at emotion. Analyze structure. Do not feel sympathy. Identify patterns. Do not rely on hope. Evaluate functional reality. Because hope without structure is simply a delayed form of disappointment. This channel does not amplify emotion. It dissects structure. If this perspective has shifted even one assumption you held, consider sharing it. Because sometimes a single insight can interrupt a lifetime of repetition. Now, based on this philosophical foundation, we will move forward to analyze the psychological starting point of remarriage in your 40s, not as a story of love, but as a system of choices and the consequences that follow them. Now, building on that foundation, where relationships are not emotional escapes, but structural decisions, we move deeper into one of the most underestimated risks in midlife remarriage. Not because it is rare, but because it is misinterpreted. What often appears as a manageable habit is in reality a fully formed dependency structure. Among women in their 40s without children, one of the most common failure patterns in remarriage is entering a relationship with a partner who is dependent on alcohol. At first glance, the justification seems reasonable. He just drinks a little. It's not affecting anyone else. At least there are no children involved. But this is precisely where the miscalculation begins. Because after the age of 40, alcohol is rarely just a habit. It is often a stabilized neurological and psychological pattern, a dependency that has already integrated itself into personality, decision-making, and emotional regulation. Let us be precise. Alcohol does not create aggression. It reveals. It weakens inhibition, allowing what is already present beneath the surface to emerge without restraint. And what emerges repeatedly is not an accident. It is structure. Consider the first signal, aggression after drinking. Before marriage, he may say, "I get a little sensitive when I drink." It sounds like honesty, even self-awareness. But after marriage, the pattern evolves. A company dinner turns into excessive drinking. He comes home late, and suddenly your past becomes an interrogation. His tone hardens. His questions repeat. The room becomes tense. Objects are struck. Walls absorb frustration. Silence becomes fear. The next morning, he apologizes. He claims he doesn't remember, and for a moment, you want to believe him. But what begins as once a month becomes twice a month, then every week, and eventually a cycle. Next, the erosion of promises. Dependency reorganizes priorities. What gives immediate reward always overrides what requires long-term commitment. He promises, "I'll drink less this month." 3 days later, there is an exception, a celebration, a stressful day, a reason. There is always a reason. And slowly, exceptions become the rule. Plans you built together dissolve into unpredictability. Weekends once reserved for connection are replaced by absence. Attempts at change therapy, counseling, commitments collapse under the same phrase. Not today, because dependency does not negotiate with intention. It overrides it. Then comes financial distortion. At first, it is subtle. A slightly higher credit card bill, a few unexplained expenses. But over time, a pattern emerges. Alcohol-related spending increases. Impulsive investments appear. Stocks, cryptocurrency, business ideas formed under intoxication. The next day, clarity is gone. Memory is blurred. Responsibility becomes abstract, and you begin to rationalize. It's still manageable, but what disappears quietly is not just money. It is stability. And finally, functional collapse. Work becomes unstable. Attendance slips. Conflicts increase. Performance declines. A man who once seemed capable begins to narrate his life as a series of injustices. They don't recognize me. The system is unfair, but beneath that narrative is a simple truth. Self-regulation is deteriorating, and when self-regulation collapses, every external structure follows. At this point, many women turn inward. They begin to ask, "Why did I choose this again? Is this my fault?" But this question is fundamentally flawed because it reduces a structural failure into a personal defect. This is not self-reflection. It is self-violence. The issue is not that you chose wrong. It is that the pattern was underestimated. Ancient philosophy offers a striking parallel. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there is a concept known as bardo, a transitional state between death and rebirth. But more importantly, it describes how the human mind mistakes projections for reality. It teaches that attachment and ignorance create illusions that feel real. Alcohol dependency operates in a similar way. To the person drinking, alcohol appears as relief, a temporary light in the darkness. But in truth, it prevents confrontation with the source of suffering. And to the partner, apologies and regret begin to resemble hope. But they are not change. They are repetition. We can analyze this pattern through 4 lenses. First, aggression reflects unprocessed internal conflict. Fear, insecurity, inadequacy. These do not disappear. They transform. In the bardo, fear appears as terrifying visions. In life, it appears as anger. Second, broken promises reflect attachment to illusion. Each time he says, "This time will be different," he is not lying. He is unaware. Repetition without awareness becomes what Eastern philosophy calls karma, a self-reinforcing cycle. Third, financial instability reflects the expansion of craving. Impulse replaces discipline. Short-term reward overrides long-term structure. And craving, at its core, is not about desire. It is about emptiness. Fourth, occupational instability reflects identity fragmentation. A self that depends on intoxication cannot sustain coherent function in reality. It fractures. So we arrive at the essential question. Is this person confronting their suffering or avoiding it? Because avoidance does not remain contained. It transfers. It becomes your burden. It manifests as aggression, as broken commitments, as financial instability, as emotional exhaustion. And this leads us to a principle that must not be misunderstood. Remarriage is not salvation. A relationship built to escape pain will reproduce it, because pain that is not processed does not disappear. It relocates. The same philosophical text reminds us, if you turn away from the light, you return to the cycle. In relationships, this means, if you refuse to see patterns, you will relive them. Control is not love. Attachment is not devotion. Dependency is not protection. These are distortions, linguistic disguises for structural imbalance. And this brings us to the next critical pattern, one even more subtle and often more destructive over time. Not emotional volatility, but economic absorption. Not visible conflict, but invisible extraction. In the next phase of this analysis, we examine the structure of financial dependency. The partner who does not share your life, but gradually consumes its foundation. If this analysis has sharpened your perception, then you are already interrupting the cycle. And that is where real change begins.